Hello, welcome to this Dota 2 video for Witch Doctor. We're discussing the two new facets introduced in patch 7.39b, well actually 7.39, which is Cleft Death versus Malpractice. Because everyone used to take Headhunter, but now we have these two new facets. Their win rates are very similar as well, but they are different facets. People, if you're wondering, well, which one's better, let's look at some numbers and discuss them. So if you're wondering, well, who are you? Why should I care? I played a decent amount of Witch Doctor. I have like 490 games, okay win rate, 8,000. I'm okay and familiar with the hero, so I'll give you what I believe is the best way to play him right now. Now, first I want to talk about between the two is the spells themselves, which is the well, not the spells, but the ease of use of both Death Ward and Maledict. So I do have these two Witch Doctors, and one thing I want you to visualize is how easy these spells are to use, because this does factor into our discussion. So Maledict, its cast range is 600, but Death Ward is 500. So you think, oh well, so Maledict is easier, right? But no, Maledict, it does have a 200 radius, so you can have an additional little bit extra when you use it. But this is roughly the limitation of how much it takes to get someone on the very edge of the spell. You do have a talent for it, but roughly this is what it takes for you to get someone. You have to be this distance to an enemy to get on them. So here's an example of that. So if I use it here, it won't affect him. I have to use a little bit closer, and that's roughly the range of Maledict. So I have to be this far to use it. Whereas Death Ward, while it is a slightly smaller cast range, it does also have the attack range ability. So you can actually use it from quite a bit further away to get the value of it. This is important because a big part of our discussion isn't just how useful the facets are, but which of these spells you'll end up using more as the game goes on. So let's look at the two facets themselves. So what does Malpractice do? When someone dies from Maledict, 75% of the damage they would have taken is now applied to all enemies in an area. So that's what it does. Whereas Cleft Death deals 65% of its damage to a secondary target with reduced damage. Oh, hello. With reduced damage. Sorry about that. So now the problem with the two spells, my son just comes into the room and leaves. So now one thing I've heard about people say is that Cleft Death does reduced damage. It is true, but if you look at it, it only does 5 less damage per tick. It goes from 60, 95 to 130 to, if you take Cleft Death, 55, 90, 125. That's 5 less damage per hit. Now Death Ward hits about slightly more than 4 times a second. It hits once every 0.22 of a second. So what you're essentially losing, let's say it's 4 times, is 20 damage per hit on the main target, pure damage. Now that is not small, but it's also not the biggest deal. It's definitely a factor in some fights. So what are the limitations of Malpractice? Malpractice, the problem with it, the main problem, it's kind of like 3 problems. Firstly, you have to land on a target who's relatively high health. If you land on someone they're about to die, it doesn't make much of a factor because the Maledict tick is going to be relatively low. So that's kind of an issue with it. You can throw it on someone and then they die instantly, and like they're about to die, you throw it on someone, it's not a big deal if they're about to die in a second anyway and they were 10 health away. That's kind of a problem with one. Firstly, you have to land it, and you have to land it on a high health hero, which isn't easy because we just discussed the cast range differences. Secondly, when you throw Maledict on someone, you have to hope that they actually die. You can throw Maledict on someone and they live, and you're like, well, then the whole facet does nothing, does it? If someone ends up living after you throw Maledict on them, it's kind of pointless. And lastly, you have to land it on a full health target or a high health target. It doesn't have to be full, but they have to have a decent amount of their health pool remaining. They have to die, and lastly, they have to die next to someone. These 4 conditions kind of have to be met for Maledict to be useful. If you land it on someone and they're high health and they die, but they're not near anyone, it doesn't actually do anything. If you land on someone and they have no health and they die next to someone, it still doesn't do anything because the tick 75% of nothing is nothing. So there are limitations to Malpractice. Malpractice is amazing if you can get it in someone who's like caught by RP or black hole and one of them dies during that duration and it's sort of a chain reaction. It's amazing then. But in general, Maledict, while a great spell, it's a fantastic spell. The facet for it is very good, but it's reliant on a lot of conditions to be useful. Does that mean that Death Ward is amazing and perfect? No, there are limitations to Death Ward as well. We talked about it does less damage. So you are going to be doing slightly less, especially level 1 is kind of a big deal. You lose almost 10% of your damage. Going from 60 to 55 is nearly 10%. So that is something. There will be times where you're like, I think I could have killed him if I had the normal Death Ward rather than the Cleft Ward. So that's one of the limitations of it. And secondly, as a facet, this doesn't come online till level 6. Malpractice is available the moment you take Mallet. You can take level 1, level 2, you'll have it for the laning stage, which is actually, I think, where it's most useful a lot of times. However, Cleft Death, on the other hand, is only active when you reach level 6 bare minimum. So there, you could go through the entire laning stage without a functioning facet. So that's one of the limitations of Cleft Death, is that 1, you do less damage, and 2, which, again, it's small, but it is going to make a difference in some situations, and 2, you don't have a fast in the laning stage. And I guess there's a third limitation as well, which is that, guess what? You actually have to have 2 targets to hit with Cleft Death. It's useless. When you go to gank someone, like let's say a Faceless Void, you gotta burst him down as quick as possible, right? You can't afford for him to time walk. You'd rather not have Cleft Death. You'd rather have a normal Death Ward. Because I want to kill him as soon as I can. I don't want this reduced damage and secondary target. But of the 2 abilities, Cleft Death, if I have to pick, generally is the better one. If you look at the win rate, they're very close. There's like half a percentage point, but it is edging out to Cleft Death right now. And I think that's going to continue to trend. Of course, one of the big reasons is that it's easier to use. Again, I can just throw it from much further away and still have value out of it. Whereas Maledict, again, I have to be a lot closer. And in the late game team fights, I'm throwing Death Ward. I'm usually throwing Cask, Death Ward, or just Heal and Death Ward. I'm not going in for Maledict. Maledict's a bit too risky. BKBs become a problem, and this is just pure damage that's always good for Death Ward. So Death Ward is the easier spell to use. Secondly, Death Ward synergizes with both of the Aghanim's upgrades. Whether it's, let's put a dummy. There we go. So if you have the shard, you also get the value of throwing it on 2 people. If you have, which is very nice, because oftentimes when you're Witch Doctor and they jump on you, you're not jumped by one person, you jump by multiple. If you're using Death Ward, you're often going to have more than one guy on you. So this gives you a very nice bit of damage you can do on both of them. It's not bad actually, 384, 250, that's pretty solid. This is level 1 Death Ward. And perhaps the biggest thing is that while you're not going to have a Scepter every game, both Death Wards do bounce. So if you throw a Death Ward here, both attacks do end up bouncing. It's a little hard to tell actually in this one here that they're bouncing, but they do both end up bouncing. This is actually hugely beneficial because late game team fights very easy. There might be creeps, you might be fighting things to jungle camp, you could be fighting again multiple heroes. It's super easy to get the bounce on everyone, and it's just a ton of damage that you can do. And again, you're not buying Aghanim Scepter every game. I want to be very clear about that. But it is an item you want to aim for. You can, like, if you look at my item build, I'm usually going for like the shard, the locket, greaves, maybe a pipe. But I want Ag Scepter at some point. And generally, you are going to get gold because of the Gree. So if I can secure my own late game as a support with Cleft Death, I'm going for it. However, if I take... I actually have this guy available on it. If I take Malpractice, I'm still relying on allies to do kills, which isn't always going to work. Anyone who plays a lot of Witch Doctor knows that your damage is incredible late game. So, of the 2, I think both are viable. I think both are pickable. I think you should take what you like. But if you want to take what is the most efficient and the best one, I recommend taking Cleft Death. And yeah, that's what you should stick with. If you like this video, I'm going to be doing a bunch of these fast analysis, but I'd love to know what you are thinking about in the comments below. If you're thinking, hey, give me a deep dive numbers wise on a couple of these facets, let me know and I'd be happy to do them. But thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.